On today's show, we're going to be previewing the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Las Vegas Raiders on Sunday Night Football. Before we get into that, make sure you click that subscribe button and join us for our Week 3 watch party starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This week, we're going to be having over an hour of pregame coverage, followed by live play-by-play of every single snap of this football game, and then, of course, our postgame coverage as well. If you want to get crazy, if you want to kick it with your fellow Yinzers during Steelers games this year, this is the place for you. We have the biggest Steelers watch parties on the YouTube platform. So if you want to join your fellow Yinzers this Sunday night, go ahead and click that subscribe button right now. Now let's talk about this Sunday night matchup. It's going to be at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas at the spaceship there that I like to call it. 1-1, both teams here. Of course, this is a rematch of last year's game on Christmas Eve, the Franco Harris game, of course, at Acrisure Stadium. Kenny Pickett led the team right down the field, right down the throats of the Raiders defense in negative degree weather and threw a bullet touchdown pass to George Pickens in one of the best moments Steelers fans have had in a very, very long time. Now let's get to this Week 3 opponent breakdown here with the Las Vegas Raiders. 1-1. They beat the Denver Broncos on the road in Week 1. Then you follow that up with a blowout against the Buffalo Bills in Week 2. The head coach is Josh McDaniels. Of course, Raiders fans do not like Josh McDaniels whatsoever. The offensive scheme that he runs is a modern pro spread offense. He comes from the school of the Erhardt-Perkins offense, popularized by the LA Rams in the early 2000s. And, you know, it's a very difficult offense to run and a very difficult offense to stop if it's run properly. Of course, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be their quarterback. We're going to be getting into him in just a little bit. The defensive scheme, a Belichick-style, multiple-style system. So they're going to run everything, but they're really going to base with a lot of dime packages, lots of DBs on the field, lots of cover 1, lots of cover 7, lots of man-match coverages. But, you know, the defensive coordinator here, Patrick Graham, he's really going to do a great job at mixing things up, keeping you on your toes. It's a very good scheme, both offense and defense. It's just a matter of execution on the player's part at this point. Now, I'm going to be getting into the strengths and weaknesses of the Las Vegas Raiders here in just a second. But first, who you guys got this week? Do you have the Steelers beating the Raiders, or do you have the Raiders beating the Steelers? Give me PIT if you think Pittsburgh comes away with the win, or give me an LV if you think the Raiders come away with the win this week. Now let's go ahead and get a word from our sponsor at BetUS here. Use promo code Steelers125 at chatsports.com/bet for a 125% deposit bonus today. Now, what does that mean, a deposit bonus? That means if you put in a deposit of $100 to $600, that means that BetUS is going to match that 125%. So if you put in $100, they give you an additional $125, $225 total to use on your bets for just a $100 deposit. I think that's a fantastic deal. If you agree with me, go ahead, go to chatsports.com/bet and use promo code Steelers125 to take advantage of that deposit bonus today. Now let's get into the strengths and weaknesses of the Las Vegas Raiders heading into this Week 3 matchup. And listen, I think that the Raiders are a little bit better than people give them credit for. They've got some legitimate strengths here. Let's start with the coaching. It's very smart coaching. I'm not going to necessarily say it's elite coaching because, listen, the Raiders had their struggles last year. We all know that. The Raiders fans want Josh McDaniels fired, all these different things. It still remains to be seen if Josh McDaniels is a leader of men in the National Football League, but there's no doubt that he and Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, know their stuff when it comes to the X's and O's. It's a very difficult offense to stop because it gives the quarterback the ability, if he can read defenses, to change plays at the line of scrimmage and can really mold the offensive play to beat that specific coverage. So if you have a quarterback that can do it, it's very good coaching. And then on defense, they throw a lot of different things at you, a lot of press. They make you beat them. It's a lot of difficult stuff that Patrick Graham throws at you, so you're going to have to deal with those X's and O's that they're going to be throwing at you here in Week 3. Also, they have arguably the best wide receiver in football in Diontae Adams on the outside. And with the way the cornerbacks for the Steelers have been playing through the first couple of weeks, it could be a serious problem here to have Diontae Adams on the outside wreaking havoc. Then also, they've got a dynamic running back in Josh Jacobs, led the league in rushing last year. Obviously, a fantastic talent at the running back position. He's one of the true three-down running backs that we have in the league today. You got to make sure that you can get him. Christian McCaffrey and Nick Chubb, at least when he was healthy, were both running pretty darn well on the Steelers' rush defense. But this week, you're really going to have to focus on getting Josh Jacobs, JJ, on the ground. Then they also have a legit number one edge rusher. So they have these really great talents at these really important positions. Max Crosby has arguably, if not probably the best bull rush in the National Football League today. If you can't anchor, this guy is going to destroy you time and time and time again. I expect the Raiders to probably double team, or for the Steelers to double team him in this game. Then also they have a decent O-line. It's not great. They're not going to be throwing at you, it's not going to be the Eagles or anything like that, but they have some nice pieces on there, and they protect Jimmy Garoppolo at least enough, and they've graded out pretty decent here to start this season. However, there are some very glaring weaknesses here in Las Vegas, starting with the quarterback. This system really does depend on how good your quarterback is. We saw that with Tom Brady in New England for years. You need a guy that's extremely intelligent. You need somebody that's accurate. You need somebody that can target all areas of the field. And Jimmy does most of those things really well. Here's my scouting report on Jimmy Garoppolo for this week. Really like the footwork. Really like the pocket presence, the ability to move within the pocket. Throwing mechanics are super clean. The accuracy is on point most of the time, one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the league, and he's very smart. The mental processing, both pre and post-snap, really, really good. However, the cons, the arm strength, really difficult for Jimmy to target outside the numbers on those outside routes towards the sideline, particularly deep, because he doesn't have the strongest arm. The deep ball throwing is definitely an issue as well with the arm strength issues. He never tries to throw it out there. He likes to throw in the middle of the field. And then the thing with Jimmy is that he doesn't have much in terms of athleticism, in terms of playmaking outside the pocket. He's somebody that can make plays within structure, and you better protect him. So it's going to be difficult for him if the Steelers' defense and pass rush can get home and put him on the ground. For me, he's a replacement level NFL starter. He's fine, particularly in this kind of system that allows him to kind of have free reign of the play, make hot routes, make checks at the line of scrimmage. He's a very smart quarterback, so it fits him nicely. But also, another weakness here for the Las Vegas Raiders is the overall pass rush. You have Max Crosby in there. That's really amazing. He's top 10, if not top 5 edge rusher in the league today. However, the rest of the defensive line here, I mean, the depth is just not great, right? You have Max Crosby, you have Tyree Wilson, who's nice. Chandler Jones is not going to be on the field on Sunday night, and then Malcolm Kuntz. It's like, I really don't believe in the talent here. Tyree Wilson is still a very raw prospect. They've been playing Malcolm Kuntz more than Wilson to this point in the season, and he hasn't graded particularly well. And then on the interior, it's not much better. You got Jerry Tillery as your nose tackle, and then Bilal Nichols as your first defensive tackle 3 technique. Not great talent overall on the defensive line, so this is something the Steelers need to take advantage of, and Kenny Pickett should have at least relatively decently clean pockets throughout this evening. Then finally, the secondary talent there in the back. Speaking specifically to the cornerbacks here, the safeties are okay. Trayvon Merrick, Marcus Epps, those guys are fine. But the cornerback depth here is just not great whatsoever. You got Marcus Peters in there as your number 1 corner. You also got Jacorian Bennett on the other side. He's not particularly great either, a really young player. Nate Hobbs is the nickelback. He's pretty decent, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised here if the Steelers try to get Hobbs off the field by getting into some of these heavier packages and put 2 and 3 tight ends on the field. Now let's get into my keys to victory for this football game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 1, you got to run the damn football, man. This was one of my keys to victory last week. They didn't do it enough. Right now, about 7 out of every 10 plays offensively, the Steelers are throwing the football. That needs to get a lot closer to 50-50 or even 60-40 running the football. I think that with this defense being as elite as it is, you want to shrink games. You want the ability to control the time of possession. The way you do that is you run the football effectively. They haven't been able to do that through the first couple of weeks. But another big reason why establishing the run game is so important this week is that I think you need to open things up with Kenny Pickett via the play action passing game, and you got to attack down the field via that avenue, because you don't want to be getting into these 3rd and long situations. You don't want to be getting into these situations for Kenny where the defense knows he's throwing. In those situations, Kenny has been abysmal this year. However, if they're scared of the run on 2nd and short or 3rd and short, and then he pulls it and George Pickens is one-on-one down the field off of play action, I think that Kenny can thrive in that kind of system, and I think that's something that this offense needs to prioritize moving forward. Then I think you also, on offense, you got to double Max Crosby. The rest of this offense, our defensive line for the Raiders, you don't really have to worry about it too much. You can have one-on-one matchups with the rest of the guys on this defensive line. However, with Max Crosby, I mean, seriously, with Chukwuma Okorafor, I don't necessarily trust him. I'd put Darnell Washington in there to chip Max Crosby on every single play, if not straight up double him this week to make sure he doesn't make a huge impact in getting them a victory. Then also, now we move to the defense. You got to defend the middle of the field. Jimmy Garoppolo is one of the best in football at targeting down the middle of the field, but then again, he's also one of the worst at targeting outside the numbers. So you got to force Jimmy G outside the numbers in this game, put a bunch of bodies in the box, put a bunch of bodies in the middle, and then, you're going to have to trust Patrick Peterson, Levi Wallace, Joey Porter Jr., whoever's on the outside to hold up one-on-one against guys like Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, but that's something that is definitely something I'm willing to risk given the limitations of Jimmy Garoppolo as the Raiders quarterback. Then finally, the way that I think that you can kind of manage those outside receivers and Devontae and Jacoby and all these different guys that they put out there is that you jam them at the line of scrimmage. We've seen this with Mike Tomlin defenses for years at this point, almost decades at this point, where he loves to get guys up at the line of scrimmage. We've been seeing a lot more quarters looks, a lot more corners playing back this year, but I want to see them get nasty. I want to see them get up there, jam those guys at the line of scrimmage, and I want to see Patrick Peterson go up mano-a-mano versus Devontae Adams in press and win, because that's going to put pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo to try to get them open and then also throw those accurate passes to them. So now coming up here, I have some Steelers X factors. I got 5 players for the Steelers that have to play well here in Week 3 in order to get a victory. But before we get into those, make sure you like today's video if you want the Pittsburgh Steelers to win here in Week 3 and get to 2-1. Now let's get to those X factors here. And of course, number 1 needs to be the quarterback here. Mr. Kenny Pickett is my number 1 X factor. You need to be able to throw the ball effectively. He has not looked good through these first couple of weeks. Let's just be honest. The numbers clearly show that. The film clearly shows that. And it's not all on Matt Canada. There is a portion of the blame to be had for Canada, but a big portion of it also goes to Kenny Pickett. This is going to be a big week for Kenny, because this is going to be easily the worst defense that he's played to this point in the season. And if he can't put up solid numbers at least against this team, and he continues to be inaccurate, he continues to do the things that have really shot this offense in the foot through the first 2 weeks of the season, then it's going to be alarm bell sounding time here in Pittsburgh with Kenny Pickett. Plain and simply, he needs to get it done against this defense this week, or I'm going to be seriously concerned. Then also, T.J. Watt, of course, the best defensive player on this team, probably on the planet right now. He's got 4 sacks right now, 3 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery for a touchdown. You just don't see these kinds of numbers through the first 2 weeks of the season. You just don't. These are insane numbers. It's going to be extremely tough for anybody to catch up to T.J. Watt if he stays healthy this year. And listen, man, he's going up against Jermaine Illuminor. And listen, Illuminor is a friend of Chat Sports. He's come on the Raiders show that we have a bunch of times. But respect to you, Jermaine, you're not ready for T.J. Watt, man. You're just not. They're going to have to chip. They're going to have to double team. They're going to have to do a bunch of different things. Last year he allowed 3 sacks. So it says 2023. It was actually in 2022. He allowed 3 sacks last year. And I'm looking at T.J. Watt, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 3 sacks in this game. All right, so it's going to be interesting to see how the Raiders deal with T.J. Watt, but he's got to have a big game if this defense is going to carry the load once again. Another X factor here, George Pickens. You got to get 14 the football, man. Plain and simply. We saw that last week against the Browns. You put the ball in the hands of 14, he gets in the end zone. He makes big plays. He is a special, special talent to this point. 9 receptions, 163 yards, and a touchdown. 71 of those 163 yards came on 1 catch on a slant. You got to be doing everything in your power, especially with Diontae Johnson out of the lineup, to get this mother effer the ball, man. This guy is a dog, and you got to get him the football as much as you humanly possibly can, because he's 6'3", 200, runs probably a 4.4, and he's got some of the best hands in the league. I mean, this guy can do everything. You got to get him the football. In my opinion, he's the second coming of DeAndre Hopkins, and he might even be better someday. Then we got, he's going up against Marcus Peters, who is the number 1 corner. The number 1 corner here at Las Vegas, and he would probably be the number 4 corner here in Pittsburgh, okay? So, he likes to press. He likes to be aggressive. You're going to see probably at least one defensive pass interference on Marcus Peters in this game, especially going up against George Pickens. But, man, he is very susceptible to giving up big plays down the field. It's been that way the last couple of years. And at the end of the day, man, I think George Pickens is really, really getting ready to feast here in Week 3. Another player that needs to have a big game is Patrick Peterson, because I think the Steelers are going to be trusting him one-on-one on the outside versus Davante Adams a lot in this game, playing press coverage. And this is what his bread and butter was for so many years in the National Football League. He's kind of converted to more of a quarters/cover 6 instincts type of corner the last couple of years. And let's just call it what it is. He hasn't played all that well through the first 2 weeks. He's played fine, but has he played like a true lockdown corner? No, he hasn't. He has 3 pass breakups, which is pretty darn good. He hasn't been bad, I'll say that. But has he really shown the ability to be a true lockdown like he once was? No, he still doesn't have an interception. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he handles Davante Adams in this game. And he needs to have a good one here if the Raiders aren't going to completely gash this Steelers defense. Then another player that I think needs to have a good game, particularly in the special teams unit, even though he's going to be playing pretty much the entire game as the Z wide receiver, is Calvin Austin III. So speedy, so shifty. I know he's tiny, man, but this guy can freaking move. He's a deep threat. Look for some of these deep shots down the field from press coverage, because you know you're going to see them from this Raiders defense. And I want to see at least one big punt return from Calvin Austin III in this football game. I think you might need that because the offense might not be super successful again this week. So if that's the case, you need your defense to show up, and you need Calvin Austin III to really give us a spark on special teams as well. Now, without further ado, here is my score prediction for Week 3 here on Sunday Night Football. I am picking the Steelers to win this football game by a score of 23-20. I don't know if that's going to be on a last-second field goal. I don't know if that's going to be 2 defensive touchdowns again. I don't know if Kenny Pickett's going to figure it out. But I have a feeling here when it comes to the Franco-Harris game, this Franco-Harris rivalry, the Immaculate Conception rivalry, all these different things. The Immaculate Reception, not Conception rivalry there, Coop. But anyway, excuse my mistake there. Anyway, my Week 3 score prediction, I think the Steelers find a way to make the big play in the fourth quarter. I think they come out of this one 23-20. Now let me know how you guys feel about this Immaculate Reception rivalry game down there in the comment section by giving me your score prediction for Steelers versus Raiders here in Week 3. That's going to be it for me today, guys. Really do appreciate all the support. I will see you guys later. Make sure you click that subscribe button. Until then, or until next time, here we go, Steelers.